Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lean right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. So, hey guys, in this video, we're going to be going over the Supreme Court's latest decisions over this last 2022-2023 term. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is obviously a huge term for the Supreme Court, who made a lot of important decisions. I would argue maybe not as consequential or big as last year, but this year is
Yeah.
still pretty big. And we thought we'd go over them, take a little break in between all the election stuff, and just give a little recap. So let's start with maybe talking about what we're gonna do. So we're gonna talk about 5 different decisions in this video. We're gonna talk about the affirmative action case against Harvard, the Biden student loan case, which was a case where Nebraska was against Biden. We had a case on gay rights versus religious freedom. We had a case on redistricting and gerrymandering, and if the courts could regulate that. And then we finally had a case where there was allegations of racial discrimination in redistricting. So
Mhm.
those are the 5 major cases in this Supreme Court term. And maybe we'll just talk about each one and then give our own opinions on it, right? So,
Mhm.
okay. You want to start off with affirmative action?
Yeah. So, in the first case, um, basically a student group was essentially challenging the Harvard and also the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, their admissions programs, charging that they discriminated against white and Asian students. Essentially, the process they were using, they were attacking, is called affirmative action, and it's when essentially you take a group of you take more students from historically disadvantaged groups like blacks, Hispanics, Native American, etc. Essentially, the Supreme Court ruled against that under the 14th Amendment, I believe, saying that they were discriminating against white and Asian students, and they banned the practice for college admissions going forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, the 14th Amendment is actually the one they used against North Carolina because the 14th Amendment prohibits discrimination by the state,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a public college. And then Harvard was sued over the Civil Rights Act because they get federal funding.
Yeah.
But anyways, yes, a really big case. I think probably the biggest case of this term, unless you're really into gay rights or something, or redistricting. And it's big because it rules that it is discriminatory to discriminate against Asians or white applicants. And honestly, I think this is obvious. Now, the only decent argument that Harvard and these other schools that employ these racist policies really had is that, hey, we know it's racist, or well, they wouldn't admit that, but it's racist, but there's a compelling argument to promote diversity in our schools, and that's why we have to do this racial discrimination in favor of blacks and Hispanics in order to increase diversity. And that was their main argument throughout the court case. There's also some precedent where the Supreme Court said, hey, affirmative action in small quantities is okay. You can't use quotas and you can't really use it in a big way. But if it's a very small factor, it's okay. And in this case, the court completely just shattered the past precedent like it did in Roe and other cases in the past and basically said, no, it
Mm-hmm.
violates the Constitution. Any discrimination is still racial discrimination, and you can't discriminate against certain
Yeah.
races no matter what. What's your opinion, Luke?
Yeah, so I mean, before that, I believe you were talking about previous decisions, and yeah, in previous decisions, the Supreme Court like banned quotas, like and banned
Yeah.
colleges from like doing like specific quotas. But yeah, on the topic of affirmative action itself, yeah, I wouldn't say like I wouldn't go out and say it's like they weren't trying to be racist with these policies. Like I'm gonna say that, like the goal wasn't to be racist. The goal was to set an equal ground for disadvantaged communities, like like African Americans, Hispanics, like historically, like are more disadvantaged in the U.S. They're more often that lower income bracket, and they need more educations to break. They need more opportunities to break out of these this lower social and economic status. So this was an effort to improve like the education of these groups and give some of these people more of an opportunity to attain the highest level of education and bring themselves out of these situations. So yeah, I mean, the removal of this policy is actually going to hurt those groups. So the reverse also hurts them. And like I think a lot of this was like targeting affirmative action. I mean, again, like in my opinion, also like I do see how it could hurt like people in the Asian community, but there's other policies that do the same thing that don't really affect Black students, like legacy admissions, for example. Like they almost exclude like these top level schools under using legacy admissions almost exclusively select white students through there. So I know the courts are challenging that now, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it goes both ways for me on affirmative action. I mean, I can see how it can impact both sides. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually disagree with the notion that the schools aren't trying to be racist. I think they 100% are. They're just being racist in, I mean, if they were being racist against African applicants, they would immediately get absolutely clapped by literally everyone in the political community. But because they're being racist against white and Asian applicants, there's half the country that's willing to support it. And here's the case. It was decided by 6-3. All the conservatives united behind Roberts' opinion, and 3 liberals, including Justice Jackson, who's also an affirmative action pick, coincidentally, basically said, no, that diversity is a compelling argument for why you should be able to discriminate against Asians. And the popular opinion kind of favors the court's decision here, as you can see. Most people, even most Democrats, think that colleges should not be able to racially discriminate in favor of diversity. Now, I think in terms of my opinion, obviously we just went through the college admissions process, Luke, so we know kind of how this thing goes. And as an Asian applicant, I kind of wish I applied next year. And also, it's just no one wants to just know going into the process that they're at a disadvantage because of their race in 2023. That's something that should have been left in the 1960s. And honestly, I think this is a really good decision. It doesn't do everything, obviously. I think maybe legacies are also an argument, but I don't know if that's a constitutional thing that SCOTUS can really rule on, because it's not a race thing explicitly. So oh well. I think that you should never look at race when it comes to employment, when it comes to schooling. It's always a zero-sum game when it comes to these kind of processes. So it's just ridiculous, in my opinion, that just because you checked off Asian or checked off white, that it's going to hurt you. But oh well, I guess we can move on, right? Let's move on to Biden v Nebraska. I guess, should I start on this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So Byron B Nebraska is a case where Nebraska basically sued Biden and basically said, hey, it's not legal for you to do all this executive orders that just relieves people of student debt. And that's just not allowed under a unilateral thing that the president can do. Basically, you have to go over to Congress, and you have to get congressional approval, and you can't just do it via the executive branch. Now, obviously, if this were to go through the legislative branch, through Congress, the Republicans not only hold the House, but also could block it, block the measure over this in the Senate with the filibuster. So obviously this could never pass both houses. So
Mhm.
Biden thought, hey, let's use this notion of a national emergency and this old act all the way back in 2003 and basically say, hey, let's use this little loophole and cancel all this debt, 10K per person and 20K for anyone with a Pell Grant. And so basically, the court did rule that it is, again, another 6-3 decision that the Biden administration cannot do this. You have to be authorized by Congress. This is similar to a lot of rulings in the past about wars and how presidents can't act on their own unless the legislative branch talks. So yeah, this is a 50-50 split in terms of public opinion. So what do you think?
Honestly, like I think, like I'm not even sure if, like I don't know, like the Biden administration did this based off the HEROES Act, which was passed by Congress, and basically gave the executive unique authorities over the education department during a national emergency, and using that power, as you said, like they were looking to cut the student loan payments, the student debt of 40 million Americans, particularly lower income Americans, by 10 to 20,000 each. I mean, just by the sheer amount this would have helped people, because like 40 million Americans, that's a large chunk of the population. That's like more than 10% of the population, just like directly benefiting from the federal government. And like it's a problem. Like, I mean, student debt is just going up and up, like over the years. It's a real problem that has to be addressed. And I think blocking that is like it's just a real tragedy for so many people. And yeah, like the states like suing Biden over this. Like, I'm not even sure. Like I mean, I think you have to have some grounds. Like you have to be affected in some negative way to file like a charge against the Biden administration. But yeah, like I don't see any negative harm because you're just like you're benefiting all these people. But yeah, I don't know. I think I think it's a real shame overall. Hmm.
Yeah, okay. Honestly, I think under the HEROES Act, I think this is actually the wrong decision in my opinion. However, so yeah, I think legally actually this might be the wrong decision here. Just after reading all the text. However, I think it's the right thing to do because I don't think okay, if I was justice, I probably wouldn't rule this way, but if I was a legislator, I would rule this way. Why I say that is because I think it's wrong to make other people pay for your debt. And we have to always remember that the federal government is not just some godly entity with a lot of money that it can spend. No, the federal government is funded by taxpayers and funded by loans that it takes. And that's why we have such a high national debt, for example. And this kind of act just makes other people pay for other people's student loans. It's just basically a redistribution of wealth, which is a socialist policy. And it's just a redistribution of wealth from those who pay more to those who pay less. And it's not even a fair redistribution of wealth because a lot of people can't afford college in the first place. If you're poor, you might just go work on your farm or go into some trade and you don't even get to go to college. And it's not even a fair redistribution of wealth because, only those under 125K family income can actually qualify for this student loan program. And so the fact that everyone else has to pay for these people is just honestly ridiculous under this program. I think, yes, we have problems with student loans, but there's other ways to address it. Just like with the affirmative action case, like how racial discrimination isn't the answer to past racial discrimination. Here, relieving student loan debt isn't the answer to student loan debt. It's an entire, change of the entire system. I think you have to completely reform the entire system and maybe force colleges to make more reasonable prices if that's allowed, if that's legal, and not make some taxpayer like me have to pay the student loans of someone else.
I wouldn't say that's how that would have worked. I mean, it's not like they were changing the tax laws or anything like that. I mean, it's just another spending bill. Essentially, it just work like a spending bill. Like, and taxes wouldn't be changed because of this. It would just, I mean, it would add to the national debt, which was already bad. But like
Who pays the
I
most
think it's just a,
taxes, Luke? Who
I think
pays
it's
the
just a
highest
raw.
who pays the highest percentage of their income into taxes? The rich. And so there's a higher proportion of money going into this program from the rich. So it's a complete redistribution of wealth from the rich to the poor. It's the same thing.
It's not really redistribution. They're paying the same taxes. It's not like the taxes are changing.
No, the taxes are different because you pay higher taxes when you make more money. So it is a redistribution of wealth. That's the problem. You pay a higher percentage of your income into the federal government when you make more money.
Yes, but why would they be
Yes.
making more money from this from Biden's changes? Like, it doesn't make
No,
sense.
you pay a higher percentage of your income if you make more money. So a
Yes.
higher percentage of this executive action, is executive action that costs $430 billion, a higher percentage of that is coming from the rich. So
Okay. Yeah,
it
that's with any spending thing, like ever, anything, any
right,
spending thing in the
but
U.S.
you shouldn't
passes.
have to.
But tax laws don't change. They're still paying the same amount. Like, they're still donating the same amount toward the federal government. Like,
But but instead of just having things that benefit everyone, like for example, let's say we're building a bridge that completely benefits the rich and the poor, this bill only benefits the poor. So you're spending more
so.
money of the rich and only benefiting certain people.
I mean, isn't that how like welfare works? Like, I mean, you're supposed to. I mean, you want to help people in need, right? I mean, and then it's not like again, they're not paying any more than they already are. Like, eh, I don't know. That I
Okay,
think we can
I
leave
think
it
we
at
have to
that. But
move on, but okay. So yeah, another this is a really contentious decision as well. So I think we could go to this next one. Do you want to talk about this one first, or how do you want to do this?
you can talk about this one.
All right, cool. So this one has a kind of sad name, really boring name here. I don't think anyone likes this name. It's not like Students for Fair Admissions. No, it's just like 303 Creative LLC, which you know in the future students are going to have to be citing this case in their essays in high school and college and law school, and they're going to have to write 303 Creative LLC, which I feel bad for them. But let's delve into this case. Basically, there was a business owner, and she had a firm called 303 Creative LLC, and her business was creating wedding websites, and she believed in a religion that did not basically did not believe in same-sex marriage. They only believed in heterosexual marriages. And so when someone came to her and had a same-sex wedding website that they wanted to create, she didn't want to make it. However, there's a law in Colorado that basically says you can't deny service or refuse to give someone service based off of many factors. For example, race, gender, disability, religious beliefs, and one of them was sexual orientation, or which way you swing in terms of how the youth would call it. And so basically she sued, and she said, hey, look, I believe in this religion that we don't believe in same-sex marriage, and so I don't think that I should be forced to make this website. I don't believe in same-sex marriage. I make websites for only heterosexual marriages because that's what I believe in. That's what my religion believes in. And under the First Amendment, it is my right to follow my religion, and the state, or Colorado, or the state in terms of the federal government, no one should be able to force me to make same-sex marriage websites because that would violate my First Amendment right. And this went to the Supreme Court after many appeals, as they always do. And basically we got another 6-3 decision because that's how things go nowadays. And yeah, so basically the court ruled that yes, you do have a First Amendment right to refuse service to homosexual weddings in the case that if your religion, says no to them. And this goes way beyond just wedding sites because, like wedding sites are kind of expensive. Like not many people are going to get a wedding site in their lifetime, but this goes a lot further because now it basically says, hey, your First Amendment right is protected to deny same-sex things for many other things. There were previous cases here as well in terms of refusing same-sex service, and it's just a big thing. This one, very, very, just very barely. The American public agrees with this decision, 51-49. Obviously, Democrats disagree, and Independents and Republicans agree with the decision, although obviously Republicans by a larger margin. So, what do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I think like refusing service to anyone, like I mean, it's not like they're attacking your business or anything like that. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. I think it's just like I don't see why. Like, just let people do what they want to do. Like, I mean, if they want to get married, I mean, it's not like you're marrying them or anything. Like, I don't get it. Like, and like, yeah, like I don't know. I just feel like you shouldn't be. We shouldn't be like restricting that kind of stuff. Like, why? Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, in my opinion, like you should just, it's not really your business like what they use it for. You make it for them, and then like that's that. Like, as long as they're not like they don't pose a threat to your business, or they're not like being rude to you or anything, like you should just serve them. Like, yeah, that's my opinion on that.
I mean, my question is why this was even a big deal. I don't get why these people couldn't have just gone to a different website maker that was fine with this. I'm sure there are many in the state of Colorado. I'm sure there's many in the United States of America. But I think this is probably the right decision because, you shouldn't. I honestly think as a business, you should never have to do anything for anyone if you don't want. I don't even think this is a religious liberty case for me. I think if you don't want to do something, you shouldn't ever be compelled to do so by the state. And honestly, if you don't want to do something, so be it. I don't think you can really force someone to do it. And if you want to do something, you can do it. If you don't want to do something as a business, if you don't want to take someone's business, you should be able to refuse it. I don't know how this law really works because Luke, have you seen those like signs in front of businesses where it's like we reserve the right to refuse business to anyone? Like, have you seen those?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
like
mean, I'm like,
I don't really know how this law, like how these laws work in this field, so I can't really say legally exactly how it goes, but in terms of the First Amendment, I do think it's the right decision. But yeah, like how can some places be like we refuse the right to give business, but then
but like,
like
yeah,
I don't know
also
how that
like
works.
on the grounds of the case itself, like I don't even think she even like moved forward with like that kind of um like the wedding website aspect of that at all. So I'm not even sure. And then I heard like some other things about like the LNS like and the other group that was the LGBTQ side rather of
The gay side.
of the case. Yeah, like there's some like there's some sketchy stuff of whether or not they were even like asking them for service. Like, feel free to do your own research on that. But I don't know. I'm not even sure there was like grounds for this whole case. Like, I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I think that there's some sketch stuff about this one.
I saw some stuff about that, but I didn't really look into it. I think we should move on though. Let's go to Moore
Yeah,
v.
let's keep it
Harper.
going.
Now, this is a 6-3 decision the other way. I think you should talk about this one, Luke. You like this.
Yeah, so yeah, these are we're onto the redistricting cases. So as a mapping nerd, I kind of have to know these. So yeah, in Moore v. Harper, essentially the North Carolina legislator essentially sued and because they were mad about their state Supreme Court, which was held by liberals at the time. So I believe, yeah, I guess I should start with the fact that they passed gerrymandered maps, and essentially the state Supreme Court ruled against those maps, saying partisan gerrymandering is against the North Carolina Constitution. And basically, they essentially said, oh, the Supreme Court can't do this because a clause in the Constitution gives state legislators ultimate authority over elections. Now, this essentially was the independent state legislator theory, which, yeah, as I stated, would give state legislators full control over state elections, making maps, certifying elections, so on and so forth. So obviously, this would be very dangerous for democracy because you're giving, again, like you're requiring that state legislators make political maps, which of course are going to be gerrymandered in favor of whichever party controls the state legislator, and you're allowing just random states to overturn presidential elections, which is not a good idea. So, yeah, but as you can see, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 against the independent state legislator theory, which is completely bonkers. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a pretty dumb theory. The courts obviously have the ability to do checks and balances over the legislative and obviously the executive branch. And so any kind of theory revolving around, state legislators having ultimate power over something, or literally anything, any unilateral branch of government having power over anything, is ridiculous. And yeah, like the Constitution gives state legislatures the ability to do their own thing for federal elections. And okay, it's like the Constitution gives Congress the ability to control the purse, and yet like the courts can check that, and the Constitution gives the Constitution gives the president powers over executive orders, and we just saw Byron B Nebraska where the court could rule and check that kind of power. The court has to be there to check the power in every form. Like you can't just have anyone have unilateral power over anything in this country. And that's the only reason that our country has survived for so many years, is because of these checks and balances. And every time some kind of dictator or group of oligarchs try to ruin the system, I'm glad that because of these checks and balances, it always seems to work out in the end. So thankfully, it's okay now, because this was a really dumb decision that I'm sad even had to be made. But yeah,
I mean, thankfully the justices ruled in the right here, and we both can agree on that. But I'm actually shocked by that polling there, bro. Like only 55% agree with that.
Only 61% of Democrats.
I don't think people understand it. That's what I think, because like there's no way. Because like again, like do people not get like what that would mean? Because like in a world where the Supreme Court did rule that state legislators had full power over elections, like we'd have gerrymandered maps, like we'd have just random states throwing their hat for different presidents. Like it would be crazy. Like I don't know, it's just like, and it would even like, there was some arguments saying it would even like be able to surpass like a governor's veto, like not just like dismissing courts in its most extreme form. So it's dangerous.
This is stupid. I mean, honestly, like I always thought the court would rule this way. I know you didn't think, you were kind of scared about this decision, but I always thought the court would rule this way because they want to keep their power. I think especially Roberts and Kavanaugh kind of like decisions where the court keeps their power, so I never really doubted them. But Justice Barrett, I didn't really think would do this, but she did. I think one thing we can see is that the conservative justices usually rule more on the policy, and the liberals just rule on their side no matter what. They don't really cross the midpoint. Only the conservatives really do, which I know. I
don't know about that, but okay.
Definitely is. I mean, just look at all these rulings, Anyways, I guess
Some of
we
this
go over here.
questionable, but okay.
I don't think that's questionable. I don't think there's been one major ruling where any of the three liberal justices have ever moved to the right in the past few years. Like they've never crossed the middle. It's always Roberts, Kavanaugh, or one of the other four that make the jump. So
I mean, yeah, because Roberts is more moderate, and Kavanaugh, I guess now to some extent too, as you'll see with the next case.
well,
But
they
yeah, I don't know.
yeah, I
There's a
don't know.
lot of ideologues on the conservative side too. Thomas, Alito. I mean,
I
I
think
guess
Thomas and
Gorsuch to some
Alito
extent.
is, but Gorsuch also moved to the left for like some LGBTQ case as well in the past. Like I think it's really okay. Like Thomas and Alito basically never swap sides, and we have three liberal justices. But then basically like I think the four in the middle are the ones that always shift. But anyways, let's go over to Alvin B Milligan. Yeah, this is another
I can do this.
redistricting case, and go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, so essentially, this was a challenge against Alabama's congressional district map, where essentially Alabama, I believe it has 7 districts in total, one very deep blue district and 6 very deep red districts. Now, essentially, oh yeah, and the deep blue districts, African American majority. Essentially, what they charged here is, I believe, 25% of Alabama's population, or something like 25 to 30% of Alabama's population, is African American, and essentially they said that hey, we should have 2 black districts to represent, the African American slice for a population, because the other districts, the other 6 districts, kind of split the rest of the black population into multiple pieces and denied them that second district. Now, under the Voting Rights Act, states, especially in the South, and in the states with all the former Jim Crow laws, like are expected to follow this. Like they're expected to create these black majority districts. And it was widely expected that the Supreme Court, which is gutted the Voting Rights Act year after year, was going to deal the final blow this year. But surprisingly, both Roberts and Kavanaugh, worked with the liberal justices to preserve it here. And now Alabama is going to have to draw a second black majority district, which would make its map in line with its racial population and more so with its political composition too.
Yeah, I think it's kind of stupid that like states should be looking at race in any context. Like I don't think you should look at you should be able to look at racial maps when trying to split up black voters, or looking at racial maps when you're trying to give them majority districts. It's stupid to me. I think you should have to draw maps that keep communities together, because you should have a representative that represents your community, not a race. I don't think you should have I don't think you should have a congressman for the black community and then a congressman for the white people in Alabama. No, you should have a community for, let's say, Montgomery, Birmingham, etc. That should be that kind of, and then those outer areas like the suburbs around the cities. Like that should be how it is in my opinion. But I don't know how it's going to work, because obviously this sets a pretty big precedent in terms of gerrymandering, and a lot of other partisan gerrymanders throughout the country kind of fall in line in racial lines. And the only reason is because, obviously the black voters are voting more Democrat. And even if you make partisan gerrymanders, they often, unintentionally kind of force black voters into certain districts. And so this could bring a lot of cases where, we get a lot more, I guess you could say, fair racial maps. But just go ahead, Luke. We only have 2 minutes, so.
Oh yeah, but yeah, this decision is gonna could have wide-ranging consequences throughout the South. I know already it's going to force Alabama and Louisiana to force to create 2 more black majority districts, 1 for each state, and it could affect states like South Carolina, Georgia, and maybe even Texas too. So
yeah,
I mean, yeah, very very wide-ranging kind of consequences.
Might have
there,
some new videos on redistricting coming out soon, because this is going to shake things up. But there's also some bad news for Democrats in terms of redistricting. So it's not all up and up for them.
But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see they rule this way in favor of the Voting Rights Act. Yeah, it's surprising.
Right. Yeah, this was another case where all these cases were really, really close in terms of the national like 50-50 split. But yeah,
Hmm.
interesting rulings. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed our analysis, us breaking down the decisions and giving our opinions on both sides of the political aisle. Make sure to leave a like again, comment to help us with the YouTube algorithm if you've made it all the way through. Um, Obviously subscribe because why not? We give good content electorally, politically, everything. And yeah, thanks for watching. Anything, Luke?
Yeah, make sure to share with your friends, guys. Yeah,
So true. All right. Bye,
promote it.
guys.
See ya.